Hello, my friend. On today's episode, I am back with Mark Fisher, and we're talking about how to handle client conflict. The inevitable sticky situations where a member is unhappy, wants an exception, or just isn't seeing eye to eye with your team. So we walk through how to make exceptions without being a doormat, how to respond when you think your client is wrong, and when it's okay to just part ways with our client. So if you've ever struggled with how to balance fairness and upholding your policies when things get tense with a client, this is a kind of a must listen episode for you. And one more thing, before we dive in, I want to tell you about a free opportunity. If you're a gym owner with over 30 clients or more, we'd like to offer you a free call to help you get clear on where you want to go with your gym, what's working, what's not working, and what the plan could look like to get there. We do this because we know some percentage of you will want our help to implement this plan, but regardless, you'll get a ton of value from this free brainstorm call. So just click the link below in the show notes to book yours. All right, let's dive in. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. I'm back with Mr. Mark Fisher. Mr. Mark Fisher, how are you on this fine day?
I am doing well.
Yeah, I mean, how's life? How's work? How's family?
They are all great. Took Celestia to gymnastics this morning, and she took her crazy pills beforehand. She was particularly out of her mind and so cute. Yeah, it's just an interesting, uniquely exacerbating thing about having a almost 3-year-old daughter is this toggling back and forth between like just shock and confusion and frustration and inability to get her to do the thing, but being in spite of yourself so bemused and just finding so hilarious, which is what a weirdo she is.
Love it.
So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, you were bound to have some version of a little weirdo, and so she's so delightful.
She is so weird. It's quite a delight. The apple didn't fall far from the tree.
That's amazing. Well, let's dive in. So today's topic, what we wanted to talk about, I think it's been a while since we've covered this on the podcast, but it's really kind of essential thing that we all deal with on a regular basis as gym owners and entrepreneurs, which is customer issues. When we have clients and customers, and I'll maybe use those words interchangeably today, is when there's issues, when we have not met the expectations of our clients and they let us know in both constructive and not constructive ways. So I want to talk a little bit today about just what our experience has been navigating those client issues, when we decide to like hold firm on our policies or our procedures, when we choose to make exceptions. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we often get our Unicorn Side members coming to coaching calls with. It's like this really sticky client situation where they've been a member for years and they got pissed off about something and they really want to accept, so it's this kind of sticky client situation we deal with on an almost weekly basis as a gym owner, if not daily basis, depending on your scale. And so let me just zoom out and start with this question, Fisher. Like, what's your approach been to dealing with customer conflict over the last few years? I know it's been evolving over the many years we've known each other, but recently, what's your current approach to handling this sort of thing?
I think there's probably it's hard to say because I think so much of it depends right on the context.
Yeah, the context
I'll start with like
is decisive here. Yeah,
kind of like micro SOP is assuming the person is being reasonable, right? So this is maybe not exactly like a high conflict situation, but the person is being reasonable and asking for some allowance to transgress against some policy or SOP or system the gym has in place. My general rule of thumb is if that's an if, but if the person is being reasonable, and I do think I will shamelessly consider, frankly, how great of a client this person is, and give like more or less latitude. But regardless, my rule of thumb is the person can almost always get one get out of jail free card for any given policy.
Yep.
And then we just want to make sure it's notated on their account and that there's a written record that we're giving them an allowance. So a classic example would be here. The first time a new client blows through perhaps a notification window that you might require to keep a credit in exchange for giving you enough notice that they're not coming to a given session. The first time that happens, I tend to say, get out of jail free card, right? And in fact, I remember at MFF, we used a app BitLancer, I think was the name of it, that
Mm,
automated the charging of no-show fees, which was something we didn't have for a long time. We finally like reluctantly put it in because it was enough of an issue, and we're like, all right, we need to discourage this behavior, right? And we even set it up so the first time they did a late cancel or a no-show, it actually didn't charge.
hmm
Right. So it's just set up as a default. The first time you do this, we're not going to charge you, but we're going to let you know if you do it again, it's going to be X. And then we notate it. Right. And I think you can use the same thing for freeze policies. There's all sorts of guidelines that you can do. And my general thumb is one Gel Gel free card, but we track it, not two Gel Gel free cards, barring something intense happening, right? Like a death in the
hmm
family or something like very extreme. So I'll pull up there again. I don't know that that's not the most, that doesn't necessarily always couple with a fraught customer service interaction. That's maybe like a separate thing. But I
Yeah.
think if you're not approaching exceptions, that's I think my back of napkin approach to handling
Yeah.
client requests for exceptions.
Yeah, I think that's a really strong one. I think that's the crux of a lot of people's tension with this issue is like, where do I make an exception or where do I stand firm? And getting
Mm-hmm.
caught between that. Like, I want to treat everyone equally and
Yeah.
have the same policies apply, but also this client's
I
been
don't
with me
want to
for
do
10 years
that.
and they pay me $500 a month. It's like,
Yep.
I want to. I want to honor that in some way without
Yep.
feeling like they're walking all over me and my
Yep.
team. And so I
Yep.
think that, that's an approach that's like a systematic approach
Yep.
to navigating that, which is everyone gets one get out of jail free card. Beyond that, you do try and kind of stick to the policy, try and
Yep.
stick to the plan. And that is truly in the spirit of wanting to treat everyone equal and creating a fair kind of playground for all your clients. So I think the minute, and we've certainly got into this issue at MFF many times in the early years, where we would make an exception for this person and not this person, and they would hear about it. Right?
Yep.
Your clients talk. And so I think the more consistent you can be, the better. Yeah. I'll say this, that when it comes, generally speaking, there's a lot we can say on this topic, but I think just our kind of best, our top hits here is one of the things that the research is really clear about when it comes to resolving client conflict is you have to do it quickly. Right. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of the things that, we've had to cultivate in ourselves over the years, which is that kind of like run toward conflict energy, where it's very easy to want to recoil from conflict and run away and bury it under the rug or make it someone else's problem or wait for it to go away or hope no one really notices. And the thing that is very clear in all the research is the faster you can resolve the conflict and address it with a person, even if it takes a little bit of time to resolve, but the faster that the client knows that you're there, you care about that, you hear them, you see them, you're engaged, you want to find a win-win solution, they're more likely to not just stick around, but stick around and stay for a long time, right? Like that the speed really matters. And that's an important message to get out to your team, right? You really have to teach your team, like when you see something, you say something, right? So they don't sweep under the rug things that they think may not matter that much. That offhanded comment from a client or that under the breath comment from the client that they don't want to have to deal with. So they just kind of ignore it, pretend it didn't happen. When the reality is we should run towards that. We should actually investigate that quickly. And I think my second thing I'll say, just big picture, is so much of being the manager or owner when it comes to client conflict is being a detective, right? Is finding out like what really happened here.
Yes.
So often we're dealing with conflict that happened when we weren't in the room or in the building, or, for people that, were jumping in because it got escalated to us. And, we don't want to assume poor intent with anyone. We actually want to assume good intent from all parties. We have to do some investigating and find out what really happened. And so that means just asking some important questions, asking lots of questions of both parties before you make some decisions or take some next steps. So something about being a real detective that I think has served me well when it comes to resolving client conflict. Anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I agree. 'Cause I think another, Pippin's screaming. I think another a distinction that might be interesting to unpack here is if the client. So now we're not talking about just like they're requesting an exception of some time. Let's talk about like they have a misrepresentation. They're upset, right? Just for the interest of a thought experiment to look at the two versions of this. Version one, I actually think is the simplest, is when y'all messed up. I actually think that's the simplest. It's almost easier when very clearly you agree with the client. You're like, yep, we could have done that better. That is I've unfortunately have more experience I care to admit over the years, just with a full-throated apology if we mess things up. For whatever reason, Maybe we can explore some other time. My why psychological is very easy for me, but there's something very easy for me being like, oh yeah, whoa, I'm so sorry. We super messed that up, right? And
Well,
that
when it's
is,
clear, it's such a gift.
yeah,
When it's clear, like
yeah,
this is not the way it was supposed to go, and it went that
yep,
way. I'm sorry. That's not our intention.
yeah,
It's not what we planned.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's so relatively easy to diffuse because if nothing else, I can be accused of many failings, but like not caring, not giving a shit has never been one of them. So it's very easy to, and further at this point too, I have so much experience knowing I am going to diffuse this just by make it clear to this person, you are important to me. Your experience matters to me. We did not do a great job. And importantly, also, here's how I'm going to do my best to make this right for you. Like, I want to make this right for you. Right. And I think I might suggest that two like micro pieces of doing this effectively are restating your understanding of what the misexpectation was and sort of what how they feel, what happened, normalize why they might be upset about that, and then affirm to them, I want to make this right for you. And then whatever comes next, right? And that might be given, that could be all sorts of things depending on what the transgression was. Hey there, Business for Unicorns podcast listeners. If you haven't had a chance yet to leave us a rating and a review on wherever platform you listen to this podcast, it would be so awesome if you take just a quick second to do that. And here's why. Number one, by leaving us a rating and review, you'll allow our podcast audience to grow so more gym owners can build a life and a gym they love. And number two, by leaving us feedback, you'll help us shape the future of the podcast so we know what you like, we know what you don't like, and we know what types of content is resonating and what else should we create for you. Thank you so much for your consideration. And now back to the show. I think the second one, which gets a little bit stickier, which maybe you want to take a first swing at this, Keeler, is when you think they're wrong, right? And in practice, oftentimes is in between, right? So I think it's an important point you made earlier. The first step is always detective work, because in the beginning, like, you might not know what's happening. You probably don't want to assume that the team is in error to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Nor do you want to assume necessarily that the client is always correct, because sometimes, in fact, they are factually wrong. So,
Yeah.
and oftentimes it's messier, it's in between. And again, that's hard to talk about in a vacuum, because really you're kind of left with the unsatisfying, like, we need to start by asking a lot of questions. But let's assume we get to the end of this road and we deal with the situation that you're going to deal with on a long enough time scale as a business owner, where you really think the person is wrong. They are legitimately very upset. They're very angry. They're packing heat. You care that they're upset, but you actually think they're actually not being fair to you or the business, or if they're an employee that they're mad at.
Totally.
How might you suggest someone go about diffusing and handling that situation?
Yeah. Well, I think in that case, what you're kind of you mentioned before, kind of the skills like acknowledging and validating, right? Repeating back what they have said and validating their experience. So in that case, what we're trying to validate there is not that we agree with them, but we're validating the fact that they're upset they have every right to feel that way, right? That it makes perfect sense that you're upset that X, Y, Z can happen, right?
Based
Anyone in your
shoes,
shoes,
your circumstance, yes,
right, would feel the same way. In fact, if I was in your shoes, I'd feel the same way if that happened to me. I 100% get it. And actually, our approach to that is a little bit different. Like the way we see that as a business is a little bit different. Let me explain a little bit how we think about it, right? And then what we're trying to do there is just kind of expose our logic. We're trying to explain our thinking for why we do things the way we do things, if that's the case, why we have a fee for a certain thing, why we have 24-hour cancellation, why we have contracts, whatever the case may be. Right? We have to kind of let them understand a little bit of where we're coming from. Will that always bring them over to your side? No. But what we're trying to do is just trying to make clear why we have the approach we have, or why we made the decisions we've had. So hopefully you can find some sort of compromise, right? We're clear about where they're coming from. We've acknowledged and validated their perspective. We share a little bit of our perspective and pull back the curtain about how we got to the place we got, with the hope that we can meet somewhere in the middle. We can find some resolution that honors our logic and plans and thinking along with your needs. And that's like the best win-win solution means everyone wins a little, everyone loses a little, right? Compromise means everyone walks away just a little unhappy. And that's kind of the best case scenario for most customer service interactions, where they're genuinely pissed and you have a difference of opinion about it. But I think, those are the basic steps. I'll also say that we have a playbook for this for Unicorn Signing members. And I won't go through all the details, but we have like this conflict roadmap conversation that has kind of these 5 steps that are more or less what we've been saying here. So I'm just going to say them out loud, just as a gift to our audience. It's really kind of 5 things you want to be part of every kind of feedback resolution conversation. It starts with thank you. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'm so glad you shared this with me. Number two is, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry this happened to you, whether I agree or disagree, right? I'm saying, I'm sorry you had this experience with us. That's not the way we like to do things. I want to make it right. I'm on your team, right? Number three that happens in this conversation is, look, let me make sure I understand where you're coming from. What happened? Right? We're understanding their perspective, understanding, what they experienced. Number four is, how do we fix it? How do we make this right for you? What can we do to get you, to win you back? Right. And number five is like, how do we, what's next? Right. How do we hold ourselves accountable to making sure this happens? Right. And so it's not rocket science, but just those five things. Thank you. I'm sorry. What happened? How do we fix it? What's next, right? Just those five things give you a little bit of a roadmap for how to have this conversation in a way that kind of honors you, honors them, and gets to some action step that hopefully is a reasonable compromise. Anything you would add to that?
No, I don't think so. No, it's a complete system.
Yeah, it's simple. I mean, not every conversation is going to be that formulaic or give you a chance to do all five of those things in one conversation, but it gives you a checklist for the most important kind of points to hit when you're trying to de-escalate a conversation and find common ground. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, maybe as a final thing I'm reflecting on here too, which is relatively more recent arsenal, I think in my war chest is firing the client.
Yeah.
And just being like, we're not going to win this. Right. And, I am not, because kindness, I think, is an important value to me. I'm probably never a proponent of just like, letting it rip, and I don't think, with a professional relationship, I believe in candor with the people that I choose to work with that are part of my chosen work tribe. With customers, it's a different standard. And sometimes I'm happy to let them go away. And I think there's a case to be made to just like, in some situations, offboard the person. And I think sometimes you might need to do that by swallowing some pride if you want to make it as relatively lubricated as possible. But here's another thing, if I could just speak to something annoying that every business owner deals with, is like, you're just not going to win every chat. In the same way, no matter what your politics are, you're not going to win the chat with your uncle that thinks the opposite of you at the holidays. It's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And in this situation, like, it's also like, you could maybe make the case that depending on your relationship with your uncle, that there's worth, going into the breach again, because maybe there'll be some deeper understanding with this. If you have a sufficient number of clients over a long enough timeline, you will. You're just not going to win them all, right? And the particularly most annoying and vexing version of this is the person that is convinced that they're a consultant. Mm-hmm. Convinced that like, I'm a business genius and I know business, so I'm going to help you out here, stupid gym owner, right?
We've had our fair share of those. I
can't remember who I was talking about this to recently. Was somebody was like, why is it Chris Travis, one of our coaches, who's like one of the smartest business people we know? It's like,
yes,
I think we're talking about this about when your well-meaning client gives you advice on the business. And listen, sometimes like, again, that's always a form of love, right? Feedback is always a form of like care, but there's a version of this where the person is just so irate that you won't give them what they want. And you're just convinced it's obvious to you and everybody in the world that what I want is true, and it's obvious I should be grieved here. And the older I've gotten, the more I'm willing to just like let that person go. And you can find disingenuous, but also like maybe some of you listening, I will just like smile and send you off into the sea.
Listen,
at a certain point, like you're not going to win. I'm not going to win that conversation. I just don't have enough time. I'm going to be dead soon. I got a kid. I got stuff going on. So we're not going to win. Thank you for your time here. Let's make this relationship come to an end.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Fisher. I don't think I have much to add other than say, like, listen, they have plenty of choice as a consumer as to places they can go and find, a good fit in most markets, at least in the United States. There's options they have in almost any place they live. There's multiple gyms they could go to. And if there's so much friction that you're in regular conflict conversation with certain clients, it's not worth it for you or for them to have so much of your energy spent on managing that relationship. They can go somewhere else and you'll find other clients that are a better fit for the way you like to do things. That's not to say we don't ever bend. That's not to say we ever compromise, but it's to say when there's a real obvious mismatch between what they want and how you do your business, you're not going to win them over. I agree completely. It's time to just, pull the ripcord earlier in some relationships.
Yeah. I think that's true, because the maybe a final comment on this is there probably is a time and place in your relationship with a client to have a difficult and candid conversation around how you feel.
Sure.
I think probably maybe a recurrent conversation here in this business is like, how do you just bring your full humanness into those relationships? And I think there's a time and place where it's probably okay to keep a little bit more space and intentionally choose to allow it to be transactional because you know you're not going to win. And there's probably a time and place where, based on your relationship with a person, you're willing to share the impact that a certain conversation has had on you.
Sure.
I used to always say in our MFF day, by the way, Business for Unicorns clients, you are easy. I love you. MFF people, if you're listening, you are not. I love you. Ninjas were very fraud. This just like doesn't happen anymore in this business. You're all like you're reasonable people. But in MFF land, I would always maintain like the most extreme example of our value of candor, which again, you don't do in every situation. You have to be judicious about this because there's only so many hours. There's, a lot of clients, is acknowledging to the client and being real and being human with them. Like, it really hurt my feelings when you said X, right? Like I felt X, right?
Yeah.
Again, I don't think you need to do that all the time, but I do think based on your relationship with an individual, I'll also give you a little bit of bandwidth. Sometimes you probably can and should have the conversation. And that might be, if it's the right person, you choose it well and it's handled well, could be a very like actual positive and growth-minded experience and conversation for the both of you.
100%. We all have experience of, the people we're closest to in life. In many cases, we're close to because we made it through tough times together. We made it through some tension together. We worked through things together. We built stronger bonds through things that broke, right? And I think that can be true for clients. And in some cases, we need to set boundaries that we're not willing to do that kind of emotional labor with clients, and that's okay too, right? But I think the point you're making here, Fisher, right, which is like we got to be okay to let people go.
Yeah.
Or there's some conflict that's not worth the time, energy, and effort to resolve it, or is not resolvable, and that's not anyone's failing. That's okay. It's okay to let it go. All right. Well, let's pull up there. I think it's a little bit of a bummer. Maybe I hope it's not a bummer to end on. I hope that feels empowering. Yes. I hope that feels like an opportunity and an option you have on your plate, dear listeners. But let's end it there. I think client conflict is there's a lot to talk about here, but hopefully we gave you all some pointers and tips for how to navigate it thoughtfully. Yes. And I really appreciate the conversation, Fisher.
Yeah. Hope you all go and fire a couple clients this afternoon.
Have a good one, y'all. See you on the next one.
Bye.